Good afternoon. Welcome back to Mindfulness Journey, week 1, day 2 now, and Sunday the 13th of February 2022. Firstly, I suppose I'll start with just a recap of what yesterday was about. It was just the first part of the mindfulness book that I'm reading, and the subjects that it touches on, and also the activity that it mentions trying out. I said yesterday that I'd go for a walk mindfully, which I did in fact do just before it started to get dark. It's a bit windy, a bit chilly, but certainly worth getting out for. And I just found it very, very relaxing. Put everything else out of my mind, just focused on each step. I can't really explain how it felt. It was just, like I said, very calming. Sort of felt at one with, I don't know with what really. Came back home very, very chilled out. So I found that worked. I hope those of you that have watched and listened, found some use in picking one of your everyday activities and doing it mindfully. Anyway, without further ado, I will carry on with the book. So we're obviously now at day 2. Now, day 1 was instantaneous focus. This one talks about instantaneous relationships. And first little sub-chapter is called The Crowded Room. It says here, bringing instantaneous focus to relationships is incredibly helpful. It can take us out of the history of the relationship. Because obviously every relationship, it says here, has its own history, its own story, and carries emotional baggage with it. As soon as you interact with someone, whether it's someone you've known for many years, someone you've been living with, or someone you've known for the last 10 to 20 years, in your family, or even a friend, someone you've known all your life, like parents, siblings, you're looking at the person through the mind, and all that history comes to the interaction with you. Metaphorically speaking, the mind is a crowded room full of voices from the past, all jostling for attention. This kind of harks back to what was said in the previous chapter of your mind kind of analysing stuff and sort of going over things that had happened, questioning that, I suppose, and then trying to predict the future. It can be hard to give people, or anyone in fact for that matter, your full attention, because the past keeps coming in and trying to tell you what's important, what to notice and what to ignore. I think what I noticed and can identify with that is just sort of those moments of kind of drifting a bit outside of the conversation, not being fully invested in it, not being there in that moment, and missing out, on perhaps sometimes some quite important information in those interactions. It then goes on to say this often results in interactions that keep following similar patterns, not because we haven't changed, but because we're stuck in the same thoughts when we're with the same people. I guess it's that sort of idea of just being on autopilot, you're speaking to those same people, you kind of your interactions follow exactly the same pattern, and perhaps you don't ever really talk about much beyond what's happened that day or how you're feeling in that moment. So saying often the story stays the same. The story stays the same, not the people. When you learn to sharpen your attention down to the moment, you can focus just on the time you're spending with the person, in the here and now, basically. You can really notice the person's facial expressions today, the way they're talking today, and you can really listen. And in that listening, the relationship can change. I suppose that makes sense. You'll be noticing all the little microcosms of how they're reacting to what you're saying. I suppose what I try and pick up on people is certainly if happens to be that they talk about something they're passionate about. It fascinates me to see how that kind of lights their face up, and sort of how happy it makes them, or I find that very interesting. Thoughts are fearful creatures, it says, and they simultaneously desire and fear other people, basically desiring their approval, love or appreciation, fearful of their rejection, or of being hurt in some way. Whenever two thought-identified humans interact, there's a pattern of desire and fear underneath the interaction. The level of fear, it says, can depend on the past experiences. So someone who has suffered abuse and humiliation, for example, in previous relationships, is likely to have thought patterns that reflect that. I suppose that can it goes some way to explaining how those that have been in those relationships end up almost finding similar sort of people, or attracting the same kinds of people, because I guess their mind's stuck in that rut of the abuse from past relationships. They can almost, I suppose, subconsciously attract that. Sorry, where did I get to? I've lost my train of thought now. Well, someone who has so it goes on then to say someone who has relatively healthy relationships may have lighter thought patterns. While the severity may differ, if you're lost in thought, the pattern will be there, and it will pollute every relationship eventually. The pollution comes because when being lost in that pattern, you can focus on what you can get from the relationship rather than being focused on you. That's an interesting thought. I don't know whether I've I'll only touch on this slightly. It's not necessarily all about this, but I experienced a very unhealthy relationship, and I suppose probably whilst trying to get over that, perhaps I was stuck in those thought patterns for a while. Although what I think I managed to do well was just sort of keep myself away from other possible partners, and kind of so I suppose I was aware enough in those thoughts to be like, right, I don't want these sort of bad thought patterns to lead me to something similar. I did unfortunately had a relationship after that didn't go didn't go the length really, and that kind of sort of fizzled out, and I didn't quite see that coming, or part of me sort of did, and a part of me was still upset and a bit angry about it. But I suppose I reflect on that now as just sort of being part of the journey and another lesson. So anyway, carries on here to say, when you speak, when the other person speaks, that the person can be thinking about what it means for them. If that other person feels bad, then they may want to make them feel better, because they feel bad about the other person's sadness. And if the first person thinks that second person is making a bad decision, they can try and make it their mission to convince them to make a different one. But it says not for their sake, not for the other person's sake, for their sake. That's interesting. I wonder if that means, it's almost a sense of you'll feel better for them making a different decision. Whether or not it's actually good for them would remain to be seen, I guess. Carries on here to say, if you listen to a friend without thinking or worrying about what they're saying, will affect you, or planning what you might say next, that listening can open up a whole new perspective. Perhaps your friend might feel heard in a way that they had not experienced before, and the connection between you is bound to strengthen. It's an interesting point there. I suppose that can, just by thinking past those thoughts, those initial thoughts, you just sort of peel back a layer of actually where a certain viewpoint is coming from, and in fact it just leads me now to reflect on a very recent conversation, well, not even face-to-face conversation, but I was having with a friend, just sort of text messaging, and it sort of come to the fore that we had, or I suddenly realised actually, I guess I was obviously not listening in this sense, but seeing suddenly sort of under something, and so kind of explored that, and found out where it basically over recent times, probably the last year or so, it had become obvious that me and this friend actually seemed sort of opposed on the way we viewed something, which I hadn't, in all our years of very long friendship, hadn't really come across. So yeah, that was something new that I suppose we were both navigating, and I happened to just sort of again peer just under that, and worked out, okay, this is, because I guess I thought before it was probably more complicated than it was. However, it's really not. It just happens to be that I've got one particular viewpoint on this particular subject, and this other friend has a different viewpoint, and that's basic, and that is obviously, and that's based on our separate experiences in similar situations. This can be. This then can be the beginning of a true relationship, which is built on shared mindfulness and shared presence rather than shared opinions. Yeah, interesting. I'm not. I'm kind of not sure on that, whether shared opinions is necessarily a bad thing. I suppose the key with that is realising its opinion, and opinions are completely subjective and only based on that person's particular view of the world, or their upbringing, or their environment. So in some ways it goes on to say this is the end of relationships as we know them, because it turns the act of relating into a present moment activity. I suppose you're experiencing it again in just moment by moment, rather than thinking of the whole the relationship as a whole. It can then become a sharing of life now rather than a sharing of history. I think possibly that's how I've started to view my relationships. I feel like I do sort of try and just focus on each moment as I'm living it within those relationships as well. This has become, it says here, the author's experience over the past few years, and it has added incredible depth to their relationships with other humans. They find this is an interesting sort of phenomena, I suppose. Here they find that they fall in love with almost every person they meet immediately. Now, I imagine that doesn't mean that romantically they're in love. After 5 minutes interaction, the author smiles when they remember them and feel a warmth that doesn't want anything from them. The same goes for mindful friends who email the author from around the world. They have a deep sense of care for them, hoping that they will wake up in peace and happiness, even though actually they may have never met them. At the same time, they can peacefully say goodbye to anyone in their life without the intense sadness that they would have experienced a few years ago. There was less attachment, but more openness, more care and love. Cool. And then this then goes on to explain another activity to try. So here's a simple way to experience a taste of this, it says, and the activity is called Mr. Right Now. And as I did with the previous one, I'll obviously read this out word for word. The popular saying goes that you should wait for Mr. Right, not just Mr. Right Now. Let's flip this on its head today, though not in a romantic way. Today, treat whoever you are with as the most important person in the world while you are with them. Listen intently to what they say. Pay close attention to their posture, their face and their tone of voice. Give this person your full attention until they or you move on. Repeat this process throughout the day and notice if the way you experience those people changes. You may be surprised with the results when you focus on Mr. or Mrs. Right Now. When doing this, I find it helpful to feel my breath while listening, as it helps me to stay present with the person I'm with. You may find this useful too. Now, my immediate thought with this actually goes to my daughter. Right, I've got a young daughter, and I'm sometimes conscious of not being fully present in the moment. Usually that comes with, you know, being on the smartphone or that being around, or actually on my laptop sometimes. So yeah, I becoming more aware of that and trying to drag myself out of that and into the moment of you know, being with my daughter. And I want to teach her, yeah, that, you know, every single moment that she wants to sort of have my attention is important, right? So yeah, that would probably be my immediate thoughts on that. That I would look to focus that attention on my daughter. Although, yeah, probably I could be more present and in the moment with. I know I've got a couple of siblings. I could certainly be more in the moment with them, rather than, I suppose, our interactions at the minute are sort of a quick hello when I pop round and see them, and then we just sort of sit and chill together. Not that there's anything particularly wrong with that, but yeah, just thinking that over now, perhaps it would be better to, you know, sit and have a proper chat like this and be mindful. So yeah, that would be the next activity, which it's going to be kind of hard for me today. I live on my own, so there's no one here I could immediately do that with. However, I did recently, you know, not long before uploading this, I had a call from my dad asking whether I wanted to go around there this evening. So yeah, there you go. I'll try and put it into practice a bit later on. Sit and have a chat with whomever, and yeah, try that out. I'll just read up sort of the last little bit of this. It's a bit of a smaller segment, this one is, than yesterday's. So yeah, this is just sort of rounds off this part of the chapter. It's saying here, from the author, enjoy those instantaneous relationships today and notice how your world starts to change, moving from thought-based historical relationships to relating through fresh, joyful aliveness is a wonderful way to live. Finally, when you're free of judgments, you can be wholehearted in your actions, which brings a sense of calm, peace and joy. It also makes you increasingly effective because old beliefs, assumptions and conditioning no longer contaminate your actions in this moment. Yeah, that makes me think of what I believe I'm trying to do. Especially when meeting new people, or people that I don't fully know yet, or even actually watching videos and watching things of people where it becomes clear that actually that others have got preconceived notions about these people. I'm trying to be mindful with that, I suppose, and I'm not making any assumptions until I fully listen to something through, or read something by a certain person that that seems to be getting a bad rap. Usually in the media is where that happens, newspapers, or you hear a quick snippet on the news. So yeah, and I'm finding that. What am I finding with that? I suppose I'm finding that I'm fascinated by things that these people are saying, and it's almost forcing me to hold different opinions or have different ideas in my head about things at the same time, if that makes sense. So I kind of go in, as we all do, I think, with a preconceived notion of something, a little bit of prejudice, whether we like it or not, and then come out of whatever I've watched or listened to thinking, okay, yeah, they made some really good points on this. I'd never looked at the certain thing that they were talking about in that way. It gives me an appreciation of that alternate viewpoint. Doesn't mean I then suddenly agree with everything they say. That there's naturally going to be things that we all disagree on, but I strongly believe that's the beauty of those interactions, those discussions that you have, those debates. That's what makes them interesting, and trying to explore and get under, like peel back a layer, like I said, and try and work out, okay, what is that person's bias, what's leading them to that, how did they come to formulate that opinion, and yeah, that's what I'm loving about that's just sort of consuming, I suppose, media really. So yeah, I guess, and what that's saying there at the end of that chapter, or part of the chapter, sorry, is just try and bring that into your actual physical day-to-day interactions. So yeah, I'm definitely going to give that a try. I hope that some of you watching this will do so. Also, just a quick shout out and thanks. There's been just today actually a couple of subscriptions to my channel. So thank you to those two. They know who they are, obviously I do. So yeah, thanks for that. And it'd be great if you can, if you like it, share it on your social media pages, get the word out, and yeah, get a bit of interaction going. Perhaps a little community of whomever, I don't know. So yeah, but that's yeah, as I said, a much shorter section of the book today. Hopefully you guys can do that and have some of those lovely interactions. For now, I'm signing off for today, and I'll be back for week 1, day 3 tomorrow. Take care all. Much love.